Hey, welcome to Breaking Boxes with No Fun Dave and no Super Fun Sherry. Right? Sure. We've got a super special guest with us today. Her name is Andrea Lamb, and we've known her for, a lot of years.
A lot of years.
And the person that we met some
10.
10 years ago, so 10 years ago. 10 years ago to today is a complete life transformation with joy moments and sorrow moments.
And different hair color.
Different hair color. I have never seen, this is the first time that I've seen her as a gorgeous platinum blonde. But welcome, Andrea. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
And basically, she had an in-the-box life. It was perfect. She had like everything planned out in life. She was going to do some architecturally stuff and had a quote unquote great job and everything figured out and family things figured out. And then poof, 5 years ago happened, and now she is brand new and different all at the same time. And new and improved really comes to mind when I think of Andrea. But give us a little rundown. I mean, you were a Toronto, Ontario Eastern citizen, and now you're not anymore. So, I don't know, share with us what's going on.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Normally, I don't like being pigeonholed or pigeon-boxed, I guess, but I think it's very accurate to say that I lived in a very typical boxy life, and I went through great lengths to make sure that was the perfect box and that it was understood and received as such for anyone looking at it. But it turns out the person that was the least joyful and authentic in that box was me. So you're absolutely right that a lot has changed in the decade that we've known each other, and I think it is worth putting on the table how I met you. And then how I met you again.
Our past life and your past life.
Yeah. You know, as wedding photographers who are probably the top in their field, by my very unbiased opinion, who capture those really high, joyful moments, you really saw me at the beginning of what I thought was that pinnacle. And while, you know, this is not going to be the forum to air out any sort of laundry, clean or dirty, the fun, indisputable fact is I hired you again for a second marriage. That, you know, anyone who is a betting person and, you know, knows statistics will probably guess how that turned out. So I have never in a public or private forum ever referred to having two ex-husbands, but I have that, as well as a lifetime of stories in between.
And in that story, you've changed careers, you've changed provinces. I mean, you're still in the same country, but if you know Canada at all, Toronto and Vancouver Island are about as far as you can get from the same country in the same country anywhere in the world. So when we met you, you were a big city woman, right?
A downtown Toronto.
I remember running into you in the Yorkdale Mall, picking up leather coats, you know, looking super stylish, short hair.
She had on a yellow coat, I think. A yellow leather coat?
Yeah.
She did when we met for coffee. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, such a great memory. Well, I'll tell you something. This just came up in a yoga class a couple days ago. There's a pose where you go up on your tiptoes, and the teacher surveyed the room, and she was like, "Oh, you can tell very clearly like who has spent any time on the East Coast because they're very comfortable on tiptoe, having worn heels for some portion of their lives." And she added, having moved from Calgary herself, that in moving west, one of the things that she has shed is her high heel collection.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I could undock my laptop right now and take you, but there is one thing you will not pry from the city girl's hands, and those are her heels. And while they basically never see the light of day anymore, I actually have a corner cabinet where they are now preserved behind glass. And once in a while, I take them out and I cook in them. Like, I don't
Nice.
cook the shoes, but I wear the shoes and I
I'm
cook.
glad you don't cook the shoes. That would not.
Or you Uber downtown for a night out and Uber home.
Yeah. Yep. And my 36th birthday present to myself this year was my very first pair of Christian Louboutins, secondhand, which I think is that Vancouver Island twist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that doesn't fly in Toronto.
No.
So I want you to give us a brief look at what the lifestyle or mindset is like in Toronto versus Vancouver Island. Just give us a little snippet.
Okay. So if I had to compare the two, Toronto's like high-end endangered caviar, and Vancouver Island is like homemade, organically sourced granola. If I could put them in food terms.
That's a very accurate, yeah.
And there's a huge, here's a great anecdote where I really realized I wasn't in the proverbial Kansas anymore. The first major hike I went on in BC, there's a trail app called All Trails, and it was suggested, we should go do this place called Mount Aerosmith on the island here. On the trail app, I think it says it's hard or difficult. And in my brain, I thought, I can do hard things. I have hiked hard trails in Ontario.
Yeah.
I'm going to be fine.
And you're a very fit person, so yeah, you should be fine.
I try, but my gosh, is there something humbling, because hard mode in BC is very different from hard mode in Toronto.
Because my family is all in Ontario and David's family's in BC, so when we're traveling back and forth, it takes a bit to climatize back to what I refer to as my BC legs. Because even just a basic walk in the city of Vancouver, or a basic walk, like you say, an easy hike, requires more out of your leg power than it does in anything in Ontario.
Absolutely.
When you're walking in Ontario, it's like a walk in the park in Vancouver.
Yeah, literally.
So looking a little bit at your career choices and your current path. Now, am I correct in saying that there was some family pressure in you becoming an architect?
I think pressure would be putting it ironically lightly. There was an expectation, there was a path, and there was no choice but to walk it.
And so family-wise, if you didn't do that, you weren't living up to their expectations.
I'll step in and defend the sort of cultural values for just a moment in saying that it wasn't so much a fear of disappointment and living up to expectations. It was more deeply psychological than that. It was proving them right and then some. It's always that the goalposts keep moving ahead or higher, and it's not even a question of will you or can you, but when. That's it. Failure is truly not an option. So it never even dawned on me to question them, because that in a way was a form of, it was a love language in a way to be like, we believe in you so much, we're not even questioning it. This will just happen.
Right.
So yeah, a sense of living a purpose that has been generated from my parents.
Okay.
And feeling rather good about it when it happened. and then feeling rather terrible about it in practice.
Right. And so when you moved out to Victoria 5 years ago, you got a job in an accounting, I say accounting, I come from an accounting
She
background.
moved to Kelowna first.
Oh, right. Right. I forgot about the Kelowna move. Right. Because why take one step when you can take two?
Yeah.
So you started working for an architectural firm there and then continued with the same firm in Victoria?
No. Well, I mean, if we really,
Did hospitals, right? They built.
yeah, great memory. And this is why I love you too. Like the vibrancy of the lives that you lead and the number of people, like intimate relationships and new stranger friendships that you develop, you still remember these details. Like it's so humbling. If I can just take a pause and kind of pedestal you two for a bit. It's one of your superpowers.
Thank you.
But
I would say David and I very much enjoy getting to know people on that deeper level, and that's why you tend to remember.
I like to say life is better lived together, and I mean that in every sense of the word. It's not just together; it's people.
yeah, it's humans, human beings. And actually, that's another phrase that has sort of resonated consistently here for me is human beings rather than human doings, and sort of looking at life through the lens of
There's a good lesson in
productivity.
there somewhere.
But I digress for a moment because I did work for a firm in Kelowna that designed hospitals. A couple branches of anecdotes from there. First, when I first moved to Kelowna, I was actually planning on going back to school. I arrived with an acceptance to do some undergrad coursework and intended to go a completely different direction in 2018. But it's a pretty good example of the magnetism of the working life. Where going back to being a poor student takes more than just a piece of paper that says that I can start doing courses again. So I did eventually end up working for a really wonderful company that not only allowed me to take a month in the summer to do my yoga teacher training, but also exposed me to a very niche market of these huge hospitals that were building or rebuilding, in some cases here in BC. And without knowing it at all, without getting too technical, when a health authority, such as Northern Health, where this hospital was being built, when they have an idea for a hospital, they hire someone called, in this case, shadow consultant on their side that sits with them and helps them basically create, it turned out to be an 800-page contract that says, this is what we want our hospital to be in words. And then several different architecture companies read through that. They pair up with builders and they say, okay, we can try and give you that for this amount of money within this time frame. Turns out, not only was I involved quite heavily in writing that huge document.
Which, by the way, she's an incredible writer on her own. Anyways, just throwing that in there.
A linguist, as it were.
Wordsmith, I would say.
Yes.
And it's rubbed off. I do love words. But it turns out even technical jargon is exciting to me. The unintended, unexpected consequence is I went from writing that contract to now working for the firm that won and is building that hospital. And I am now going sort of toe to toe across the table with the people that I was originally collaborating with to make sure that we are indeed delivering on the document that
So there's
I read.
no way you can say, "Oh, I don't know what was in there."
Well, in fact, it's even worse. It's in some cases, it's like, oh my gosh, I know what was omitted, and that's not great. It's like I already built in the loopholes, and now we're trying to figure out whether or not our firm can use them. Anyways, I don't know how much of this I'm actually allowed to talk about. Come to think of it, but
We can.
I don't actually expect this to go anywhere, which is why I'm comfortable doing it.
So when we chatted on the phone yesterday, you were getting very excited about your next steps and the specific training that you are jumping into.
Oof, yeah. My gosh, my career has not been a standard one, very outside the box. And I've been lured by the call of the law for a very long time. In my current job, I work a lot with claims and disputes that could arise. The architecture and construction industry is getting quite litigious. It was before, and now it's even worse.
Just a minute.
Of course.
Has these kids. This is like, so most of the podcasts that David's been doing, he's been doing them by himself because both of our kids, like they're 8 and 10 now, but they still are just like, we need one of you out here to be able to ask a million questions to.
I hope
We've been a half
that
an hour.
I hope there's another version of this podcast that is titled something like "Truly No Stupid Questions" or the things that
Okay,
I'm
so the architectural law is very litigious, and so you are going to.
I am applying to a Master's of Law program in September for construction law, and I'm finally veering in the direction away from being a generalist, and I hope to actually have some formalized expertise in something because it's turned out that most people that walked the architect only path ended up getting licensed, and now they are practicing, and that's wonderful. Or those who were in law become lawyers and they do that. But in between, there is a niche where both sides don't talk very well to each other. And it turns out that I've found a very comfortable place translating and mediating between these two groups based on the knowledge that I have. So, yeah, hopefully come September, I will be doing a part-time master's through Osgood that my firm is, fingers crossed, paying for. and we'll see sort of what
You
the
get to
next
be a
steps
student
are.
again without having to become a student again.
Yes, full circle. Really making it work for me. Trying.
One of the things I'm very curious about is every time that I talk to you, and I tend to talk to you more than Sherry does, so I'm saying I, but every time we talk to you, you are joyful. And I know that you've been through a lot of crap.
Difficulties, yeah.
Crap. How do you stay joyful when life circumstances
Throw curveballs.
throw knuckleballs?
Oh, great questions. Two-part answer. First, the observer effect is definitely in play here because when you talk to me, it's when I'm joyful. And you talking to me is part of the reason I'm joyful. I can assure you, I spend a lot of days huddled in a burrito blanket, not very joyful. But I think that is part of the broader answer is I've still maintained a lot of the connections with the people that I believe to know me for me. That outside of the layers and the boxes that I'm in, that there's a sort of kinship and a trust that that vibrancy is always going to be seen by the people that care about me. So I am joyful because I'm hearing from you, and it helps me maintain a degree of joy. So know that however frequent or infrequently we talk, every single time it is like a pure beyond silver lining for me.
Oh, that makes me excited. Thank
No
you.
pressure.
I was checking for tears.
They tend to sneak out from time to time.
It is interesting. Like, I always have wished that that we lived closer. Like, even when we go to Vancouver, to go across on the ferry is almost too, it's too far when we're going to visit family, and then and it's like,
you have to understand
like
the BC culture is nobody crosses the boats unless they have to.
Oh, I know. I've seen
the
it.
Vancouver people, and David included in that, do not like. Why would you take the ferry? Why would you live over
We have everything we need on the mainland, and the
Um,
islanders say we have everything we need on the island. Yeah.
And this past summer, I was saying to David, like, it's been 2 years since we've seen you, and I was like, I want to go over and finish a trip that we had started, do some more hiking, see you, and stuff like that. And it's just, yeah, I think it's one of those things, you come across people in your life that are kindred spirits, I want to say, to use that terminology. And it doesn't matter how infrequent your conversations or how long between or how short they are. It could be just a random text, but there are people in your life that resonate deeply. And I would say you're one of those people for David and I. I mean, in 350 weddings, 400 weddings?
500, honey. Nice try.
Okay, whatever. Keeps track. I just love it. You're one of our favorites. And it's grown from just that to a true friendship.
But also, when you find those people, you have to fertilize those relationships.
Yeah. And so, like when he's like, "Oh, I heard from Andrea," or I'll creep you on Instagram or whatever to see what you're doing, which you don't post nearly as often as you used to. And so I'm like I'll say to Dave, have you texted Andrea lately? Have you, how is she? He's like, no, I haven't. I've been meaning to. And there is a deeper, we talk about you a lot more than just text, and conversation goes back and forth, because, yeah, I would say you're one of those people that resonate deeply with David and I, and whom we respect.
Like to be around.
And, yeah, like to be around. And like you say, like-minded, in that life is not just a box. You have to strive for happiness. And I remember talking to you when you had moved to Kelowna, and we actually had a wedding in Kelowna that wrapped up at 8:00. And so we got together with you, and we're sitting there on the lakeside talking, and you were just so happy because I think at that point you had just started your teaching.
Yes.
Your yoga teaching.
I think it was
your
day
yoga
3. I think it was day 3.
Okay. And you were
Early
just
on.
so excited about this and talking about it, and that even though life wasn't taking you in the path that you thought it would when you were in high school, when you were in university, that you just embraced the change and looked for the next thing that would make you joyful in your heart and in life, instead of being satisfied with the status quo.
Or instead of saying this crappy thing happened, therefore I'm just gonna.
Yeah, that this is my life now. That instead of being okay with the decisions that you made that didn't turn out perfectly, that you, instead of being just fine, that you embraced the hard thing, which is to push out through that and keep pursuing that next thing that will be what makes you happy, what makes you joyful, what makes you content with your life. And that has taken you on a path that a lot of people would see as difficult, frustrating, hard. And yet here you are, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years post all that stuff, still joyful, still pursuing a new career, proving that just because you have one career doesn't mean that you can't pursue another one.
Why not have two?
Why not have two? Why not have three?
Yeah.
Why not have four? And who knows where the next 5 years will take you, right? And it's like that enjoyment of the journey of life, instead of just sitting there, okay, how's your life? It's okay. How's your life? It's fine. And it's like, no, my life is crafted the way that I want it to be crafted, and therefore it makes me joyful. And therefore I have made the choices to pursue what I want out of life.
To find out what you want.
To find out what you want. That's the other thing. A lot of people don't even stop to sit and think, assess and sit there and think, okay, is this where I should be in life?
Yeah.
Is this what I want in life? Or make a plan, make a goal, and then strive for that.
And the other thing that some people do is they'll say, oh, well, this didn't work out, but I already did it and I have that degree, therefore I'm going to stay in this until I retire and never actually spend the next 25 years doing what I don't want to do. Even though I know I don't want to do it, I'm not going to change because that would be scary and uncomfortable, and I don't want to do scary and uncomfortable.
I mean, it would be very easy for you to have stayed in Toronto, worked in the family business.
Easy from a security standpoint.
That's what I mean, is easy from a security standpoint.
But really hard from a day-to-day.
Emotional, day-to-day stress perspective.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up so many points, and I'm sorry if you saw me looking away. I was typing out some notes. First, very humbling that you would consider us kindred spirits. I said to David in a convoluted text yesterday that I've always admired both of you, the way that you live your lives, the way that, you do not compromise and settle, and you embody true creatives, in my opinion, because creatives do exactly as you said, they craft. And even if it is not the artistic craft that you are constantly improving on, you are crafting your lives, which is not a guarantee for every creative. Some of them really stick to the box of that art. And I think the word craft has really heavy meaning to me because it is what in some cultures, say Japanese culture, for instance, there's that idea of the lifelong learner and the lifelong expert. And they are the ones that have coined this idea of ikigai, or living to find the purpose and passion of your life. And that mentality, I think, is why I don't see setbacks as such. I really refuse this idea of being a victim to my own life or in the passenger seat of it. Like when bad things happen, I don't want life to happen to me. Like I happen to life. And frankly, all of any bad things that have happened, I have 100% had something to do with it. And if I wasn't part of it, I can be part of the solution. And I think that's just always been my mindset. And I'm very lucky. I attribute a lot of it to sports. Like very much this, like, you just pick yourself up.
No, I was just thinking about the ultimate frisbee night in Toronto. So that was a good day too.
I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation. Sherry, Andrea invited me down to Ultimate Frisbee in Toronto. I'm going to go drive 3 hours to go play Ultimate Frisbee for a couple hours and then drive home in the snow. Good plan. All right. That was before kids.
Oh, you're going to go for the evening and I get to sit home and do whatever I want by myself?
You get to sit at home and do whatever you want. That's a plus.
Yeah.
Well, you've done more to life than a lot of people do to life in their whole life, Andrea. So well done there.
Thank you. I am absolutely a lifelong learner, which also means I will be a lifelong failer. And I'm good with that. There's what the first lesson that they sat us down in architecture school to teach us was, none of you are special. We administered an English Précis test as part of the interview process. Each one of you failed. We just happened to think you all failed in a notably creative way, but rest assured you failed. And that, I think, has really solidified the outlook of like, yeah, who cares? Failure is part of it. And if you're not failing and you're not iterating, then you are stagnant.
Yeah.
I like to say you're either growing or shrinking. So if you're not growing, you're shrinking.
I like that. Yeah. Because there's always movement in a direction. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot more comfortable, but it's a lot more fun to grow, but the process isn't easy. No. And it's a lot easier to shrink, and the outcome is uncomfortable. So either you're uncomfortable either way. It's either going to be short term or long term. You get to pick. So you be uncomfortable short term, you grow. You be uncomfortable long term, you shrink. Like it's uncomfortable either way.
Even if you shrink, sometimes then you're forced to grow. And so you should have just grown in the first place.
Right. So this idea that, I just want to have a comfortable life and I want to, be what's the word?
Status quo.
Well, status quo is an option. I'm thinking of like what's the word? A stable. Yeah, that's the one. There we go. It's comfortable and it's stable and it's the same thing every day. And it's like, okay, but it might not get you to where you want to go.
It's something that I thought about a lot before moving from Toronto. Stability versus sustainability. And to me, I think that they can be quite different things when it comes to life crafting. Because you're right, like stable is almost stagnant, and sustainable, while there can be moments of peace and rest and recuperation, it's still got a direction, and it thinks about things in the long term. On a time trajectory, whereas stable is like just now and potentially,
the striving for comfort, I guess, is
striving. Yes,
and we see comfort in our culture as lack of stress. So if there's no stress, then we're good. We're comfortable. There's no worry. We don't have to fear anything.
That fear piece. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
We're jibber jabbering over here. It's all good.
Well, fear being like one of the greatest sources of like avoidant decision making is so big. Like whether it is unknown or our discomfort, fear of fear of failure, like everything I think can be boiled down to that. And while I think there's an evolutionary benefit, obviously, to having proper risk assessment capabilities, there's I think nothing more tragic than having lived anything but a safe life for fear of
the unknown.
As somebody said the other day to me, don't ask what's the worst that can happen. Ask what's the best that can happen.
And and of course in that, I might be pushing the analogy a little bit, but because I do want to maybe end, I don't know how much time we have, but on the metaphor of that crab that I learned about.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So tell us about the crab. You were. What's the study of it? What's the study called?
Carcinology.
Carcinology. Now, this is a word I had never heard before, and it is the study of
crabs.
Crabs.
It's different. And it gets its roots like words carcinogenic and the zodiac sign Cancer. It gets all of that from the shape of cancer cells and the way that they spread out, much like crab legs. I could go on, but I would just be repeating this 2-part episode of Ologies, which is one of my favorite podcasts. But on the topic of sort of fear and vulnerability and growing, that's what crabs do when they outgrow their shells they molt and then they reharden. But in that period of time in between, they are literally soft shelled. And the one thing that they rely on to protect themselves, it actually exposes them. But it is a necessary part of their growth. Otherwise, they will die and suffocate in the shell that they're in. So they have to take that risk, and eventually they harden and they are a bigger, better crab for it.
On the
So
same, go ahead.
no, well, I, I am, I've resisted a lot of things here on the West Coast. Believing entirely in astrology is one of them. I do resonate a little bit with my astrological Cancer sign in many ways, mostly being quite soft and squishy on the outside and appearing to have a very impenetrable shell. But I think I am in a molting stage right now. I think that
Producing a bigger shell.
I am producing a bigger shell, but I am also soft and squishy. And that's where I think maintaining and cultivating community is really important, especially in this time. Because if I can't look out for myself, at least I have, or I know that I have people
Others
around me
will.
that will.
Yeah.
So next time you get soft shell crab, just know that you're actually eating a hard shell crab that's trying to grow.
Oh my gosh, that has been plucked and it's most vulnerable. I can. It is one thing that I definitely struggle with philosophically. The more I learn, the less things I eat.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think soft shell crab is now off my menu, my diet.
On the topic of animals and molting, I heard, I don't remember where I heard it, but basically that the bald eagles, another nice Western Canadian beautiful creature, that they'll live about 40 years, and at the end of 40 years, their feathers get old and they don't really work anymore. So the bird has two choices. One is that they just die. And the other option is that they pluck out all of their own individual feathers with their beak, and then they smash their own beak off. If they do that, their feathers and their beak regrow and they live another 20 to 25 years. If they don't, they can't fly, they can't fish, and they die. So go.
That is so metal.
Information to be verified.
Yes, I got there.
I do remember hearing something about that.
But
It may
it's
have
like,
been off of YouTube, which
whether it's true or not, the idea of it is in that life is not a roller coaster. It's not. It is a roller coaster ride. It's not a nice little cruise through the countryside in your car. It's not smooth. It's not. It's not comfortable, and it shouldn't be. It should be filled with growth and discomfort and making new shells and being exposed in the soft points. And it should have seasons and there should be rainy times and sunny times. And it doesn't make it good or bad or horrible or great. It's life. And I think one of the things that I want to make sure that people listening know is that life is filled with a bunch of adventure, good, bad, indifferent, hard, easy, exciting, fruitful, unfruitful. And that's what makes it fun because you never know what's around the next corner.
That's beautifully put.
Eloquent. I mean, not as eloquent as some of your legal jargon documents that the architecture firm is using, but no, actually, one of the funny stories about Andrea and writing is for years we would send her all of our ad copy that we would write. And
about us.
Like our about us, it's like, the writing on the website that was important. We would send her our draft. And then about 2 days later, she'd get back to us with this like beautiful, flowery, like perfectly written, emotive speech.
It's as if she could read my mind and put it on paper.
And so we called it, could you just Andrea-ize that?
That needs a bit more Andrea to it.
Because we're like, you should hire us. Whereas, yeah.
I would again, in an Andrea way, reframe that and say your humility got in your way.
And you're probably right.
And in looking back over, 12 years of business, we still struggle with that. Like, it's one of the harder things about being an entrepreneur is to sit there and talk about yourself and the life experience that you've had and how that can benefit someone else. Because it just, like,
if we know it, we already know it.
Yeah.
So obviously everybody else must know it.
But
too.
it's not even that. It's just like, what value could I add to your life? Or what, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where you think, well, they can, like, if
They can do it
yes,
without
it's
me.
yeah, exactly. It's a conversation for sure. But then when I think back on my life, and I'm like, yeah, there have been conversations where, that struck a light bulb for me, or just the way that person said something motivated me to move to the next step, or whatever it is. And if I can be that for someone else, then I would love to be able to do that.
Yes, it's hard to evaluate your own impact from where you're standing sometimes.
Well, and as a wedding photographer, it's like, well, you could hire the next wedding photographer. So what, like, if you lined us all up, what value do we have over that next guy? And that's hard to communicate, not being on, like, I don't like standing in front of his camera.
I finally got a good picture of her after like 10 years.
Yeah.
And it's not the one that you used for your travel agency?
No, it was like last week.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten off the camera yet.
But I haven't even seen it to, like, approve it. He's just
she's
like,
not
it's a good,
yet.
he's like, you don't get to approve it because it's a good photo and I don't care for your critique.
Yeah, you're great.
I mean, it is a creative's and an entrepreneur's, like, worst nightmare to be asked to be performative about their work, because the work ought to just speak for itself. And it's like, if you appreciate it, great. And if you don't, I really don't want to have to sell you on it.
So
That hit the nail on the head, because that's true. It's like, well, if you like our style and you like what you're seeing on the website, then hire us. But to try and communicate that in, like, a Zoom call or something like that, or a consultation, is very, very difficult in that short amount of time.
I had a few canned responses for people when they would ask. I had to memorize. They were true, but I had to memorize them. And it was like, well, why should we hire you? It's like, so if it was the woman asking, I would always say, well, I'm going to give you the most beautiful picture of you that you've ever seen. And it was like I would deliver on it, but it's like I had to come up with a few of those where it's like, no, okay, this is what I'm going to deliver to you. And for the guys, it was like, I'm going to make family photos so fast you're not even going to know they happen.
That's just it, though. Like, you're creatively putting a spin through the lens of the people that you need to hire you. Like, what is most important to them?
Yeah.
And that is in itself a skill. It's like, the outcome, but the process is what you're selling. And I just want to take a moment. I'm so sorry. I keep taking so many moments to say, like, both of you together and your dynamic was one of the things. It's like, I hate to say something so crude, but it's like not trusting a skinny chef. It's like you two together imbue what a healthy dynamic partnership is like. And I think that was part of what sold it. And you can't even write about that. So one of the biggest things was, actually having a sit down and seeing you, and to
and
this
seeing that we
day,
both wear gray sweaters to a video thing.
Oh yeah, and they're both merino wool, so
you like gray screen yourself.
we look great. Yeah, we look great.
Ooh, nice one.
But yeah, the love is so palpably there. But more than love, like the respect and the sort of like staying in your lanes, but also knowing when the other person like needs a boost. Like you two have always sort of been that I don't know, benchmark for a healthy partnership.
Well, Andrea, you don't know this, but you gave me one of the nicest compliments I've ever received when you said, after the first go around, you guys were one of the only people who just continued to see me as me, regardless of what happened. And I've thought about that often over the years, because it's true. Regardless of your circumstance, you are still Andrea to us, and just as much a friend today as you are every day. But thanks.
Yeah, it's the true practice of equanimity. Like you two embody it. That unconditional friendship and love has been felt. And of course, it's nice to get reminders of it, and it's nice to actually live in these moments. And Sherry, please take the ferry over. I will meet you at the ferry terminal.
All right.
I don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah, we're on a bit of a worldwide adventure at the moment, but when we are back in BC, right, we will make our way back across the ferry.
Did David tell you about that? Our whirlwind adventure?
Please remind me again, for the record.
You would remember if he told you. We are off on a grand adventure. Friends of ours said, hey, we're going to Europe for the winter. Do you want to join us? And we were like, oh, well, that's an option that if we said no to, we will regret for the rest of our lives.
See, living life without regret. Yep. Practicing what we preach.
So we said yes. And so on Sunday, we are, at the end of January, we're off to Spain, Cyprus, Italy, Ireland, Scotland, England,
Italy again.
Potentially Italy again, yep. And who knows in between. But yeah, so there's two couples, two families. So they have 3 girls, we have 2 boys, and we are all traveling together.
All homeschooling.
All homeschooling.
Amazing.
Just living a crazy life.
There we go. There it is.
Da fun V. That's exhilarating.
Yeah.
That is living outside the box.
It for sure is, even by my standards, and I'm married to Dave.
I don't see boxes. I don't allow them.
They just look like the little coins in Mario Kart to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually,
hit them.
One of the things that has stayed with me all these years, and I assure you it's been put into practice many times, is the use of banana boxes, speaking of boxes, when moving. And I think of you every time, and I have moved a lot.
Do you know how many trips I've taken to grocery stores and gone to the produce manager and being like, hey, do you have any bananas? But they're really solid.
Specifically, yeah.
Why would you pay Home Depot or
for the wrong boxes when you can get the right boxes for free?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Go expecting nothing, ask, and make sure you have a truck because you probably get 12 of them.
You're not even using boxes anymore, just a couple suitcases, I assume, or duffel bags.
3 suitcases, 2 carry-on, and that covers everything that we need for camera gear, computer gear,
clothing, homeschooling, music production, yeah, clothing. And they say size doesn't matter.
Whatever.
It does when you're packing for a long trip.
It does. Yeah.
Size and weight.
That's right.
Everything is like this extension cord versus this extension cord. Well, how much does this one weigh?
This one's 30 grams lighter.
Yeah.
You have the bike packer mentality.
Yeah.
Sawing off the end of the toothbrush.
Right.
Haven't gotten that far yet, but definitely like vitamin containers. Like, why do you only have half filled? Like, let's just...
Well, I lightened up our youngest's backpack a few days ago, and it was like we took a few items out, and it took a solid 3 or 4 pounds out, and it made a big difference. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's keep going. But anyways, Andrea, thank you so much for coming on. I'm very excited to see what happens with your very directed and purposeful future. Maybe staying in that lane, maybe finding a whole other highway altogether. But we will continue to love you and be your friend, and
maybe becoming an entrepreneur and being a consultant in that area, like a mediator.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
Future job prospect.
That might be a little too outside the box for Andrea.
That might be.
No, thanks for coming on here. I stay on just once we press the end button here, but thank you for sharing your heart and your life with us, and we'll talk to you again soon.
My pleasure. We'll see you guys somewhere in the world.
Toodaloo.
Toodaloo.